The following is an exclusive presentation of Meet the Leaders, only on Optimum. We're your TV, phone, and internet company.
Coming up on Meet the Leaders, what does the passing of the casino bill mean for Long Islanders and the concerns over the Common Core learning standards? Where do we go from here? Meet the Leaders starts right now. Hi, I'm Pat Halpin. Welcome to Meet the Leaders, the show getting you to the heart of local government right here and right now from the New York State's 7th Assembly District, Andrew Garbarino, and from the Sayville School District, Dr. Walter Schartner. I want to thank you both for being here. Assemblyman, you've been on this show before, but districts have changed, so let's just go over the communities that are part of your Assembly District.
Oh, Pat, it's great to be back. Part of my Assembly District runs from Brightwaters to East Patchogue, all along the south shore of Suffolk County, Bayport, Sayville, East Islip, all those districts, and all of Fire Island.
So, in the last couple of weeks, there's been all these public meetings all over Long Island, and I know you've had them in your communities about the Common Core learning standards and how they're being rolled out. Assemblyman, what are you hearing from educators, from teachers, from students? Superintendents, yes.
Actually, just last night we had a forum in East Islip, and a lot of what we're hearing is anger. There's a lot of anger, a lot of confusion from parents, from teachers, wondering why this Common Core, the way they're rolling it out, why it's just being done so quickly. There's not, teachers are upset because they haven't been prepared for it. Parents are upset because the curriculum that the children are bringing home from school, taking them 2 hours to do math homework, and the parents can't even help because there's no textbooks. Right. There's a lot of frustration out there, and I think rightfully so.
Dr. Schartner, before we get into what's caused that anger, if you could just give us a little primer on what are the Common Core learning standards. This is something that just didn't come down from Albany last year. There's been a lot of discussion, national conversations about that. You had the race to the top, which was something that was being promoted by the Obama administration. That actually came as a result of an initiative from the National Governors Conference, right. Republicans and Democrats. Right. So what the heck does that mean, Common Core learning standards?
The Common Core learning standards are standards that are universal. I believe there are 48 states that have signed on through the Governor's Council. They were put together by a group of university professors, educators, and I believe funded mostly by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, because the federal government cannot fund national standards. It's against the law. So Bill and Melinda Gates paid for it.
So they paid for it, and look, in all fairness to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, this is a foundation that has been spending billions of dollars saying that the American education system is not where it needs to be if we're going to be a successful nation as time goes on, given the changes in what's going on in worldwide competition. So what are the different standards? You say 40 plus. What does that mean in terms of math and English and science and technology, all this stuff in STEM that tends to get mixed into this? But what does it mean to teachers in Sayville and students that are being taught there?
It's basically looking at increased rigor, and the teachers are all for increased rigor. What they're upset about is changes being made so rapidly that it really is not beneficial to the students.
In what way?
For instance, we'll talk about mathematics.
Right.
Well, right now we're pushing K through 9 mathematics reform through the Common Core learning standards. And they have modules, the curriculum from the state that the state says you don't have to use, but the tests are going to be based on them, so obviously people use them. But they don't take into consideration that if you have a 7th grade class, the sequence of knowledge working up to that 7th grade class is different. So not only are you teaching 7th grade curriculum, you're filling in the gaps from kindergarten through 6th grade that wasn't done in the previous curriculum.
Right.
If this was brought in, started at kindergarten, worked its way up, teachers would really embrace it. It would help students.
Now, the Commissioner of Education, he's made the point that you have to start somewhere.
Right.
And,
From the beginning is usually the best place.
But we can't afford to be waiting 12 years for Common Core learning standards to be implemented. I mean, Assemblyman, we spend a lot of money for education. And I don't know about you, but when
I be first or best, that would be my.
Well, here that's the question. How do you do this without starting somewhere? He said he cited the state of Kentucky. That's when they began. They had similar outcomes, which was that everybody was shocked when they saw the standardized test and the results, where very few people, very few students were successful. So, what does the commissioner say when you have these meetings with him?
Well, he hasn't had any meetings with us. We've invited him to a couple of our forums. He hasn't come. He hasn't had a couple of his own, but you know, when they talk about, well, we have to start somewhere. We had a parent last night bring up the similar thing. Well, if this is good, why can't we just do it? You know, I've talked to plenty of teachers who over the last 40 years have been teaching. The curriculum has changed before, and it's worked. They've worked it in. They've given teachers the ability to work it into to what they've been doing. The way this is, it's taking a 7th grader who for the previous 7 years have been learning one way and just completely changing it. Taking a teacher who's been teaching a certain way for 30 years and saying, you know what, that doesn't work anymore. We're going to change this. It's like the Titanic. You can't just stop it and change gears all at once. You know, it's not going to work. You know, you say, well, can we wait 12 years for it to work? My question is if the way it's rolling out now, it's not working. So are we going to wait 12 years to figure out, well, we screwed up, and then that's a whole generation of children who've lost their childhood?
That's an interesting point. Is it that dire? As a superintendent, you're hearing from a lot of parents. They're upset. You've been in education. You knew this young man when he was a student in your middle school over at Sayville. So you've been at this a long time. You've seen education reforms come. I mean, in my opinion, education today is much more rigorous at the primary and secondary level than it was, you know, frankly, when I was going to school. I could be wrong about that, but it certainly seems that way.
The students we are preparing on Long Island are some of the best students in the country.
Right.
If Long Island were a state, we would have the top education system in the United States. And we have data, I don't have it with me, but we have data that supports that. We have the most Intel winners 2 years in a row. We have the Siemens winners. Our STEM programs are far beyond.
That's science, technology, engineering, and math.
Right, are far beyond the rest of this country. So really, I don't think it's broke on Long Island. What I do think is an issue with the Common Core learning standards, not only the lack of preparation, but the lack of funding.
Okay, we have to take a short break. When we come back, I want to talk to you about that because we've got to figure out where do we go from here. And you raise a fundamental question, which is how do we pay for the kinds of training at a minimum and the curriculum that's necessary to be successful. So stay with us. We'll have more with Assemblyman Andrew Garbarino and Dr. Walter Schartner right after this break.
This is the ocean, and this is Kipper. Kipper doesn't live in the ocean, but if she did, this is likely what would happen. This is Sparky, and this is habitat destruction. Boozer doesn't like it, neither does Fluffy. We wouldn't let this happen to Kipper, Sparky, Boozer, or Fluffy. In the oceans, it's worse. Lacking opposable thumbs, Kipper can't take action, but you can. Visit BeringSeaCanyons.org.
Did you get a call from the coach about those kids who were caught drinking? Not our guys. They know better.
Yeah, they know better.
Heads up, sport.
Real kids are curious about alcohol. 40% tried by the 8th grade. Talk early, talk often, get others involved.
Yes, ready, ready.
Oh, come on, Randy. Animal shelter, here I come. And no, I'm not crazy or emotionally damaged. That's a stereotype. I just belong to a total loser. I'm a good dog. So if you want a pet, adopt. And if you see Randy, tell him he dropped his wallet.
Welcome back to MTL here with Assemblyman Andrew Garbarino and Dr. Walter Schartner, who is the superintendent of Sayville Schools. I am so happy that both of you are here to talk about this because I want to really get your thoughts on where do we go from here. You know, you alluded to the fact that there's very little funding to help districts pay for the training, the curriculum, and all that. And one of the things that struck me by the news media, by the coverage, and that's why I'm glad you're here, because we'll get beyond that, is this something that teachers are resisting, or that they feel that that it's going to be somehow unfairly used to evaluate them? Where do the educators, I mean, you and I both know the key to a great education is that teacher in front of that school of kids. Everything else supports that.
Correct.
When you were superintendent, you're superintendent before you were principal, your job was to support those principals.
Absolutely.
So every day they were as good as they could be. What's necessary to make, what do we need to do to address the legitimate concerns that teachers have?
Well, first thing we need are resources. We need funding. And honestly, if I can talk to Sayville. We get $2.25 million less in state aid this year than we did in 2008 and 2009.
And if you got that money, how would your school board invest those dollars?
Well, we'd invest them, number one, to keep the tax rate close to the levy cap, which is going to be low this year. But to properly do the Common Core learning standards, you need to train the teachers. You need to train the teachers in what the learning standards are, not just give them modules to follow. They're not robots. These are professional people, and they care very much. I was at a classroom today. A teacher invited me. It was an ELA, Common Core lesson.
These are English language learners.
No,
not ELA. Or what is that mean?
ELA is English
English language
arts.
arts. I'm sorry. I'm thinking of ELS. Okay, right.
So they had 5 books that the class had read, and the 5 books were all on educational opportunities of students.
And these are third graders.
These are third graders. And it went from Africa to Afghanistan to poor sections of rural United States, and immigrants coming in, which would be your ELL population.
Right.
And it went through the struggles, and they discussed this. Then they went around and looked at pictures. And the pictures all had something to do with the stories, but the kids don't know this yet. But they were able to process that, hey, this looks like it comes from this story, which was from Africa.
Right.
Or this one looks like the rural U.S. So they're making connections with the story.
So part of what you're saying as I'm listening to you is that one is that kids are processing pretty complex information
Absolutely.
for third graders and thinking about it as it relates to them, so it's helping them with their critical thinking.
Yes.
The other is it's part of geography.
Absolutely.
It's part of a geography lesson.
And it's part of civics in terms of realizing what they have and the struggles that other people have to go through to get what they take for granted. So there's a lot of levels of the lesson. And the teachers are all for increasing the standards, higher level thinking skills. They just need time. It needs to be done properly. Can't be just thrown at us like it was.
That is such a fair and I think important point. So what you're telling me is that teachers, great teachers, good teachers, teachers who you have, with the right training, with the right tools, with the right materials, they'll be able to implement this.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Is there any doubt in your mind?
No, none whatsoever.
So why did the state education department say, okay, which again, this is from the news media, I haven't spoken to Commissioner King. Why did they say, okay, we got to start anyway, let's just put it out there. And over the last 2 years, the regents have done their thing, and they essentially mandate this. This is an unfunded mandate by and large, without, if you will, kind of testing this to see how's this going to go.
Because the commissioner failed to ask any superintendents. The superintendents of Suffolk County have sent a letter to both the governor and the commissioner. Actually, well, they did send the letter, but we have a follow-up endorsement by, so far, it should be close to 60 school districts, the school boards, the superintendent, the Teachers Association, and the PTA all endorsed the Suffolk County Superintendent's letter to the commissioner to slow down.
I was going to ask you, what do they recommend?
Give us funding, slow down. Try to pull the APPR away from.
What does that stand for? Is that the data system?
Teacher evaluation.
Teacher evaluation.
System.
Oh, okay.
Pull the teacher evaluation system away from the new standards to give the teachers a chance to breathe, because they feel pressure from that too.
And that in part becomes a major distraction as opposed to getting them to focus on the things that you want them and your building principals want them to focus on to improve their practice.
It's leading with the hammer.
Right.
It doesn't work.
Assemblyman, the superintendent has made a good point. The state legislature has the power of the purse. And there's going to be extra money this year. The economy has picked up. There's been there are reports there's going to be a fairly substantial surplus. The governor has a proposal to use that money to give people additional property tax rebates. And you're sitting here saying, look, everybody's for tax rebates, but I'm hearing from my superintendent saying, I could use a couple of $1 million to help hold taxes down, at the same time provide the training that this Common Core requires.
And this is, let me just,
go ahead.
And this is millions of dollars that the state has taken away from their obligation to fund education. Right. They have their formula to fund education. Over the last 4 years, they have instituted a gap elimination adjustment, which is a direct negative from their responsibility to fund education. So they should get rid of that negative first before they do anything.
Before they do anything.
That's $12 million over the last 3 years, just in Sayville.
And that's real money.
Yeah. Well, we talk about funding. Common Core, the state, one of the big reasons I think the state also adopted was they were getting $700 million from the federal government. Islip School District, I think, got $30,000. Sayville got $4,000.
$4,000 this year. 16 over 4 years.
For the implementation. Most of that $700 million stayed up in Albany. Didn't find its way down. And Dr. Schartner is correct about the gap elimination adjustment. I mean, it is. Last year alone, we did cut some of it back, but it was done very unfairly. I think in my entire in the 7th Assembly District, the average reimbursement was 16% of what was owed. The big cities got, I think, on average, 46%. So it was, they're getting their money back quicker than everybody lost money, but they're getting it back much quicker than we are on Long Island, and it's drastically affecting, the teacher's ability to teach the students.
Yeah, no, it is. Why don't we wrap up on this point, because we have to take a short break, but you wanted to say something.
Well, the gap elimination adjustment is also done very unfairly. Whether it's the city, upstate, it does benefit everybody, and that's a common thing for every school district in the state. Their number one item on their list is eliminate the gap elimination adjustment, because it'll help everybody, some more than others.
Yeah.
And one of the arguments that the politicians, usually use, elected officials, is that, well, if we get rid of the gap elimination adjustment, Amagansett will get a 20% increase in state aid. Well, yeah. However, that's $65,000. Right. They get nothing.
Yeah, they don't get much in the way of state aid.
Where Sachem might get a 10% increase in state aid. Well, that's $14 million.
Right. Right. No, you're right. I mean, you're comparing apples to oranges.
The document from
you and I both know that the wealthy districts don't get much in the way of state aid, but for
the gap elimination adjustment has directly hurt the poorer districts more.
Yeah, those that don't know. I'm sorry, I've got to cut you off.
Okay, sorry.
But we will have you back and to talk more about this, especially as the budget unfolds.
Great.
And we'll be back with Andrew Garbarino in just a minute. So Meet the Leaders will be back in less than 90 seconds. Stay with us.
Why should you choose to fly Long Island MacArthur Airport? I'm ISO Town Supervisor Tom Croce, and the answer is clear. Close to home, no lines, convenient parking, a 5-minute shuttle from Long Island Railroad's Ronkonkoma Station, and Wi-Fi is now available at the airport from Optimum. Internet access while you wait for the flight. Long Island MacArthur Airport, the stress-free alternative. Relax, your vacation starts here.
You show your smile to the world every day, but nearly 4 out of 5 Americans say they would smile a lot more if their teeth looked better. The good news is, healthy teeth can be safely and affordably corrected at any age. Advances in orthodontics have made the treatment more successful and comfortable than ever.
Only orthodontists receive 2 to 3 years of education beyond dental school to learn the proper way to align and straighten teeth. To learn more, visit mylifemysmile.org.
Some goodbyes are worth fighting for. Help the Marine Corps Scholarship Foundation honor Marines by educating their children at mcsf.org.
Welcome back to Meet the Leaders, here with New York State Assemblyman Andrew Garbarino. Assemblyman, we spent a lot of time talking about Common Core, and I appreciate you bringing the superintendent here, because we got into that. But there are a lot of other issues facing Long Island in your district, and one is now that the people of the state of New York have said we want to legalize casino gambling. I suppose the question is, what does that mean for Long Island, especially since everybody talked about casinos primarily being in upstate New York?
Well, I'm the ranking Republican on the Racing and Wagering Committee up in Albany, so it was my job to debate the bill, and so I had to read the full 250 pages.
God bless you.
And
I wish more members of the Assembly read bills.
So do I. We probably stopped passing some bad ones. But Long Island won't be getting any casinos. The bill restricts that they'll all go to upstate New York. But what the bill does allow is that Nassau and Suffolk County will each be getting 1,000 video lottery terminals that'll be run by the OTB, each OTB.
The Off-Track Betting Corporation,
yes. And what concerns me is, there could be 1,000 VLTs for Suffolk counties. That's a lot. That could bring in a lot of revenue. They're estimating maybe $20 million a year. But what concerns me is it's not run by Suffolk County. It's run by the Off-Track Betting Corporation, and there's no oversight. Suffolk County only gets the surplus from OTB. So there's nothing to stop the OTB. You would know this from being county executive, that there are a lot of problems. Currently, Suffolk County's OTB is in bankruptcy because of overspending. A lot of patronage is there. So I'm concerned, and I brought this up during debate, that with no oversight, you'll be seeing you know, a lot of six-figure patronage jobs, assistants starting at the OTB,
right.
you know, because these are considered expenses that get taken off the top before any money gets back to the taxpayer.
So what can be done to prevent that from happening? I mean, in the end, members of the off-track betting board